And I do want to thank them for their generosity and their hospitality and the love and care they show this land that we get to live, work, and play on. And I do think it's incumbent upon all of us to unlearn what we've learned in the past and learn the true history as to what's happened on these lands. And if we do that, we're going to build an incredibly bright future full of love and empathy and prosperity for all of us here, plus going out well beyond 7 generations. And so it's a pretty exciting prospect. I also want to recognize the immense contributions of our teammates at the City of Vancouver. And I'm going to actually take a little bit of time here today as well, because our people, not our people, the people that choose to work at the City of Vancouver are absolutely incredible. And we're so fortunate as a city to have people who choose to be here. And so I'm going to highlight a few. First of all, it was a bit of a nutty weekend in the City of Vancouver, let me tell you that. And I can just tell you the VPD did an incredible job keeping us safe. There were protests that were going on, and it's incredible that we live in a country that allows that to happen in a peaceful manner. And the VPD were incredible this weekend. In addition to responding to a bunch of calls, we did have an incident in front of the City Hall where there was a van lit on fire with over 100 liters of accelerant on there. And the fact that no one was seriously injured, or injured for that matter, was absolutely amazing. And let's just highlight what really goes on there. Our firefighters Vancouver's firefighters, they don't belong to anyone, literally put their safety at risk. They run into harm's way. And I tell you, they're incredibly courageous and selfless. And so I just want to give them a big shout out. And that's in addition to a big fire that they've responded to last night, four homes affected there. And finally, one thing we do is we have what we call the You Rock Awards, and it's our opportunity to recognize team members at the City of Vancouver that are just doing amazing things. And we have a huge list, so I can tell you I wish we had more awards. But today we are going to celebrate an individual who works as a content strategist in our technology services department. So Tanya ensures the city's digital presence is not only visually appealing and functional, but their creativity and technical expertise makes sure that it serves as a reliable and engaging resource for our community. By the way, these words that I'm reading, people get nominated by their peers, so people don't just submit their own resumes here. These individuals are highlighted very proudly by their team members. So to Tanya's colleagues, their role as a mentor and leader cannot be overstated. Tanya leads by example, fostering a supportive and collaborative environment and inspiring their team to strive for excellence. One such example of Tanya's leadership was during a fire incident a number of months ago, where she developed the urgent webpage in less than 90 minutes, providing essential information to Vancouverites and highlighting their professionalism and dedication in a time of need. Tanya goes well beyond the call to live the values of the City of Vancouver, and we are incredibly grateful to have Tanya as a teammate. So Tanya, you rock. As a small token of our appreciation, you get to choose a couple of tickets to either a future BC Lions game or a Whitecaps game. And I know it's a small token, but we absolutely love you and thank you for wearing the colors so proudly. Okay, do we need to take a recess? It's been a long meeting already, eh? Yes. All right, with that, can we please get a roll call?
Mayor Sim in the chair, Councillor Carr, Councillor Kirby-Young, Councillor Dominato, Councillor Bly,
Present.
Councillor Boyle is on a leave of absence for personal reasons all day, Councillor Fry, Councillor Montague,
Present.
Councillor Klassen, Councillor Meisner, Councillor Joe.
Present.
You have quorum, Mayor Sim.
Great, thank you very much. So the plan for the day, any comments on agenda items can be sent to council using the web form on the city's website. The link to that form will be posted on X at Van City Clerk. Now, I do want to note the City of Vancouver's longstanding commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including the utmost respect for all genders. And so I'm going to remind Council that when addressing speakers and the city's team members, we will avoid using gendered honorifics and instead refer to the person by first and last name, role, or title. Today, we have 3 administrative items: in-camera motion, adoption of minutes and matters adopted on consent, 1 communication, 5 reports and 7 referral reports, 16 bylaws, 1 administrative motion, notice of council member motions, new business, and inquiries and other matters. So now the plan for today is we're going to break at noon for lunch, followed by the in-camera meeting at 1 p.m. We're going to return at 3 p.m. to continue to deal with the remainder of the agenda and adjourn or recess at 5 p.m. for a dinner break and reconvene at 6 p.m. to complete the agenda. Hopefully we do that before 5 p.m. If the meeting does not finish today, the reconvene date is Tuesday, October the 15th, 2024 at 3 p.m. In camera, council is required to meet in camera later this week. The reasons and authority under the Vancouver Charter are listed in the agenda. Would someone like to move a motion to? All right, Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Carr. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Minutes 1 are from the council meeting on September the 24th, 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Would someone like to move a motion? Great, Councillor Kirby-Young, seconded by Councillor Claassen. All those in favor say yay. All opposed say nay. Great, carried. Minutes 2 are from the public hearing on September the 24th. Are there any corrections? Someone like to move? Great, Councillor Joe, seconded by Councillor Claassen. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, motion carries unanimously. Minutes 3 are from the council meeting following the Standing Committee on Policy and Strategic Priorities on September the 25th, 2024. Are there any corrections? Someone like to move? Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Carr. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, motion carries unanimously. Matters adopted on consent. Council will now consider matters adopted on consent. We have communication 1, reports 2, 4, 5, and referral reports 1 through 7 on the consent agenda for council's consideration. So we're going to hold reports 1 and 3 to hear from speakers. Now, council may adopt the recommendations for the communication reports 2, 4, 5, and referral reports 1 through 7 on consent. Does any member want to hold any of the items for debate or questions to team members? Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks. I'd like to hold communications 1, please, Mayor.
Communication 1. Okay. Anyone else? Last chance? Okay. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on the consent items? Seeing none? Okay, so just give me a sec here. So we have reports 2, 4, and 5, and referral reports 1 through 7 for the consent approval. Would someone like to move adoption of the recommendations? Great, Councillor Claassen, and then seconded by Councillor Joe. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. So now the following items have been approved on consent. So report number 2, which is the 2025 business license vehicle for hire and animal control fees. Report number 4, closure of a portion of road adjacent 525 Powell Street. Report number 5, Community Housing Incentive Program grant, ALT Jackson Housing Society. And referral report number 1, CD-1 rezoning 2156 through 2174 West 14th Avenue. Report number 2, CD-1 rezoning 701 Kingsway. Report number 3, CD-1 843 text amendment 888 West Broadway, formerly 878 through 898 West Broadway. Referral report number 4, CD-1 rezoning 523 through 549 East 10th Avenue. Referral report number 5, CD-1 rezoning 2175 West 7th Avenue. Report number 6, CD-1 845 text amendment 728 through 796 Main Street and 205 Union Street. And referral report number 7, rezoning 3983 through 3991 West 10th Avenue. Water there. Okay, so communications. We're now going to consider the communication held for questions to team members. We have communication number 1, which is the 2025 council meeting schedule that was held for questions by Councillor Kirby Young. Would someone like to move a motion? Oh, sorry. Just skip that point. We're on a roll there. There are questions. So, Councillor Kirby Young, first, you've held this report. Yeah, can we just work on the, can we please get Councillor Kirby Young first? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councillor Kirby Young, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. And thanks, everybody. Good morning. I've held this report before and asked the same question, and I feel compelled to ask it again in the spirit of our commitment to drive and deliver housing faster, and also the changing landscape with the provincial regulations about streamlining public hearings. But it always, there's always a disconnect for me when I see a schedule laid out for the year and I see fewer and fewer public hearings in our schedule. And so last term, we would have regularly in a council cycle, we'd have 2 days of council and 2 public hearings. And now we're having council weeks with no public hearings. Maybe they have one. You know, look at January, for example, it's got 1 public hearing. February only has 1. Just scanning through, same with March, we finally get to 2 in April. And yet I'm hearing from applicants that they are waiting for dates and they are told that there is not availability in council's calendar. And my calendar feels like it's very open compared to the amount of time we used to schedule public hearings previously. So I'm really looking to try to better understand that and get some insight as to is it processing and applications aren't ready because we certainly have time? Is it that the public hearing process is changing? Like, can we get some perspective on that? Maybe through you to the city manager?
Thanks, Councillor, for the question. Yeah, certainly, and happy to follow up with planning and report back to council with more detail. I mean, certainly I would agree that council, and it's not my understanding that council's availability is a rate limiter right now on public hearings. I think we are seeing a need for fewer dates, both in terms of just the process, the number of applications in queue, but also this council is quite a bit faster in processing them than the last council. We were only able to get through 3 or 4 files per night with the previous council. We're seeing this council process 7, 6 and 7. So we are trying to adjust to that. I do know that there's a large volume of rezonings though in the queue, and yeah, for sure we will want to ensure that there is sufficient council time. I'll defer to the clerk here as well. I mean, there is quite a few reserve dates that if we needed more time for public hearings, there is time baked into this schedule as reserve dates that we could use for that purpose. So at this point, I don't anticipate, but I'll like I say, double check with planning and confirm.
Yeah,
council schedule would be a rate limiter on rezonings.
yeah, thanks. I would really appreciate any further insight that planning might want to provide and a loop back on that, because I continually hear that and I don't know if it's accurate or not, but it would be nice to just deal with that comment that we get, that applicants are telling us that their council doesn't have a date for them. And so I'd just like to see if planning has any additional perspective. Thanks very much.
Great. I just want to make a quick comment. I'm glad to see that our public hearings are running a lot more efficiently. Getting through 3 would be quite painful.
Move the recommendations.
Oh, sorry. All right, on efficiency, yes. Thank you very much. Councillor Kirby Young, seconded by Councillor Carr. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing no one in the queue, I'm now going to call a vote. Can we please go to the voting panel? Great. Okay. Okay, it looks like that is passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so that completes communication number 1. All right, we are now at reports. The first report is report number 1, Reconciliation Report 10-Year Colonial Audit Consolidation. Now, does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on this item? Okay, seeing no one, this item does have an incredibly important presentation, and we have team members to present the item.
Amagon Thlak, Bill Hampner, Dawayu, Ispugwaram Gitwilgyat, Stizabu, Lakwalam, Stevil Watku, and Simshan Nu. My ancestral name is Bill Hamner, and I come from the Gitwilgyats tribe, from the Blackfish clan, from the community of Lakwalams, from the Simshan Nation. My English name is Michelle Bryant-Gravel, and I'm the Senior Director, Indigenous Relations for the City of Vancouver. I also want to acknowledge the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples on whose unceded ancestral lands that we are on today. And I recognize the responsibility that we each have to walk softly on their land and leave it in a better way that we found it. I'm wearing my regalia today as a representation of who I am and where I come from. The crest on my button blanket depicts a sea grizzly. It's representative of my tribal house that I come from, and it's a visual depiction of the history of my name that has been passed down for generations. In my Tsimshian culture, you can only wear one of these blankets if you have been given an ancestral name. Our names inform others of the lands that we have been entrusted to care for and the place that we hold in Tsimshian society. It also represents the role and responsibility that I have within my tribe and my community of Lakwalams. And it is a representation that my tribe and community claim me. What I mean by that is, in the era of people pretending to be Indigenous and making false claims about where they come from, I have proof of who I am. As an Indigenous matriarch, I have a real Indigenous community to back me up. When we don't call out these false representations when they occur, we are contributing to perpetuating the violence against Indigenous peoples. Just because the violence isn't horrific or shatter us to tears doesn't make it any less violent. Indigenous peoples have been targets of many forms of violence for far too long. Physical, emotional, colonial. We are asking people to begin to learn the real Indigenous history and understand that truth must come before reconciliation, and stand beside us as we do this work to indigenize and decolonize these spaces that were once set to keep us out. Indigenous people can't do it alone. This year, we recognize the 10-year anniversary of the city declaring itself the City of Reconciliation. And there has been acknowledgement of the unceded territories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, and trust is being built through our work with UNDRIP. There is still much work to do with the public, to bring the public along with us on this journey towards reconciliation that the city is on. Bringing some truth before I talk about reconciliation. Indigenous peoples had no choice but to live and to learn within the Western mainstream society with no reciprocation. Our culture was devalued at first glance, without a thought or willingness to observe and learn what we as Indigenous peoples could teach about living in balance and harmony with the lands and each other. We have had to negotiate a world that has aimed to disenfranchise us and strip us of our identity through assimilation, dispossession of our lands, resources, and territories, and genocidal policies. But despite the systemic and social oppressions Indigenous peoples have faced, and still face today, we are still here in all of our Indigenous excellence. We have survived colonization, and it's only recently that Canadian society has begun to realize the value of traditional teachings, our culture, and Indigenous self-determination. Because of the work done on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls Inquiry, and the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. The world opened their eyes, at the announcement of the 215 unmarked graves at the Kamloops Residential School. And the history of what has happened to Indigenous people could not be brushed to the side anymore. The City of Vancouver did play a role in this brutal history, but here we are in 2024 celebrating 10 years as a city of reconciliation. The city has demonstrated its willingness to work with Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh as partners, acknowledging these nations as rights holders to the land that Vancouver is situated on. And this is why we are here today, to provide the 6th reconciliation update to Council on the work that city departments are undertaking to advance reconciliation here at the city. I would like to share with you actual excerpts from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission 10 Principles. As a reminder, I'll turn this light on. A reconciliation framework is one in which Canada's political and legal systems, educational and religious institutions, corporate sector, and civil society function in ways that are consistent with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which Canada has endorsed. The Commission believes that the following guiding principles of truth and reconciliation will assist Canadians moving forward. Number 1, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People is the framework for reconciliation at all levels and across all sectors of Canadian society. Number 2, First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples, as original peoples of this country and as self-determining peoples, have treaty, constitutional, and human rights that must be recognized and respected. Number 3, reconciliation is a process of healing relationships that requires public truth sharing, apology, and commemoration that acknowledge and redress past harms. Number 4, reconciliation requires constructive action on addressing the ongoing legacies of colonialism that have led destructive impacts on Aboriginal peoples' education, cultures and languages, health, child welfare, administration of justice, and economic opportunities and prosperity. Number 5, reconciliation must create a more equitable and inclusive society by closing the gaps in social health and economic outcomes that exist between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Canadians. All Canadians, as treaty peoples, share responsibility for establishing and maintaining mutual respectful relationships. Number 7, the perspectives and understanding of Aboriginal elders and traditional knowledge keepers of the ethics, concepts, and practices of reconciliation are vital to long-term reconciliation. Number 8, supporting Aboriginal people's cultural revitalization and integrating Indigenous knowledge systems, oral histories, laws, protocols, and connections to the land into the reconciliation process are essential. Number 9, reconciliation requires political will, joint leadership, trust building, accountability, and transparency, as well as a substantial investment of resources. And number 10, reconciliation requires sustained public education and dialogue, including youth engagement about the history and legacy of residential schools, treaties, and Aboriginal rights, as well as the historical and contemporary contributions of Aboriginal peoples in Canadian society. And together, Canadians must do more than just talk about reconciliation. We must learn how to practice reconciliation in our everyday lives, within ourselves and our families, in our communities, governments, places of worship, schools, and workplaces. And I wanted to share that today as a reminder, because a lot of the things that have been outlined in those 10 principles are things that the departments within the City of Vancouver are undertaking. And while we are starting down this road of reconciliation, there is still much work to do. And these 10 principles are essential to keep at the forefront as we do the work of decolonization. In today's report, we'll review the council recommendations that we are proposing as staff, look at the 2021 to 2024 highlights of the report, also recognize the 10-year anniversary of the City of Reconciliation, and some key highlights of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples work, and then move into discussion of recommendations. The recommendations that we're putting before you today are that Council directs staff to integrate all future reconciliation and UNDRIP reporting into a single annual UNDRIP report to improve efficiency of reporting to council, and that council directs staff to cease scoping a colonial audit and integrate objectives of the audit into the UNDRIP implementation program. I'm sharing these with you first, but I will also share these with you at the end of the presentation to go into discussion. Some of the highlights of 2021 to 2024. As we moved forward as a city of reconciliation, our reconciliation goals continue to be guiding priorities: to establish and maintain mutually respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in the City of Vancouver, to uphold and advance the rights of the local nations and urban Indigenous peoples, and to achieve its goals, this city uses the reconciliation framework established on July 8, 2014, to guide its reconciliation work. To achieve these goals, the reconciliation framework is built on 3 pillars: cultural competency, creating learning opportunities for city staff with local nations and urban Indigenous communities; strengthened relations, acknowledging the harm of colonial history and working towards stronger, respectful relationships; and effective decision-making, a flexible, mutually respectful approach that supports economic empowerment and Indigenous rights. The reconciliation report highlights for 2021 to 2024 highlight the creation of a standalone Indigenous Relations Department and a senior director role. This work has seen the Indigenous Relations Department grow from 2 FTE to 6 FTE through departmental shuffling and I guess acquisitions. With the closure of VEC, we're very fortunate to bring Nathan over to the team and to meet the increasing engagement and incorporation of Indigenous relations across all city departments. The UNDRIP strategy and action plan development and implementation. The strategy passed in October of 2022, and the first UNDRIP action plan passed in June of this year. And as we continue to build upon our reconciliation efforts and momentum, this work will continue to guide our way forward. We have signed a relationship protocol with Squamish Nation, the Wa'iyam Ta Squamish Protocol, that sees our underlying relationship with Squamish strengthened. We are currently working on a protocol with Tsleil-Waututh and Musqueam as well. We have seen the permanent raising of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh flags as a meaningful act and visual symbol of our continued commitment in our relationship with Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And we have seen a report of the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women and Girls Calls for Justice and Red Woman Rising report, an important report outlining the path of the continued and critical work to address the atrocities that happen to our women and girls. We also have incorporated Coast Salish ceremony at City Hall and integrated it into the way we do business. And we use this as an enactment of recognizing and practicing local nations' legal protocols as this integration seen in the formal passing of both the UNDRIP strategy and the action plan, as well as in restorative processes, is a powerful expression of reconciliation in action. The Indigenous collaboration on the Gastown Plan is a significant step in reconciliation, as the city's closure of a city block for a National Indigenous Peoples Day celebrations in both 2023 and 2024 of the closure of Main and Hastings. We've also seen the development of a reconciliation and decolonization pathway for staff learning. Furthermore, we have included reconciliation within our city's leadership competencies in the performance and development planning process. The Natural Environment Inventory and Network Project will identify opportunities for ecological restoration, area expected to support reconciliation and UNDRIP actions. And also our continued work with MVAC as a society with 25 Aboriginal organizations represents a valuable relationship within the diverse range of Indigenous peoples living in the city of Vancouver. As we move into celebrating the anniversary of the 10 years of the City of Reconciliation, I would also like to acknowledge the individuals who came before me in the Indigenous Relations Manager position. Ginger Gosnell Myers was pivotal in paving the way for the work that the city has done and continues to do with reconciliation and working with Indigenous communities, followed by Monica Wilson, Caitlin Crabtree, and Lindsay Grant as the previous Indigenous Relations Managers, doing this work alone and carrying the weight of that responsibility with no staff to support them. And as I stand here as the senior director with staff to support me, I couldn't imagine the weight that they carried and the significant impact that they all had made in the work that they have done. So I want to really hold my hands up and thank them for the work that they've done and acknowledge them as part of the anniversary of the 10-year City of Reconciliation. So just going into a few highlights between 2013 to 2019, Council endorsed a motion as a key step to beginning the UNDRIP path that we are currently on today. The motion was to adopt UNDRIP as a framework for reconciliation. Council also formally acknowledged the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh as the first colonial government in Canada to do so. Between 2015 and 2016, Council partnered with local nations to create permanent art pieces in Council chambers that you see here today that represent both the unceded traditional territories as well as the stories of the nations. Aboriginal health centers were created in partnership with the Urban Native Youth Association and Luma Housing. In 2017, intergovernmental engagement started with both council-to-council meetings and staff-to-staff levels, creating more comprehensive and collaborative partnerships with Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. Between 2018 and 2019, the renaming of Queen Elizabeth Plaza, as well as the Vancouver Art Gallery with Squamish and Halkominum names, were very important pieces to having the language placed on the land. Moving into more recent history between 2020 and 2024, as I mentioned, we created a new role for implementing the recommendations for the Murdered and Missing Women and Girls report. And that position was sitting in ACCS and is now sitting in Indigenous Relations. There was training provided for park board staff on reconciliation, as well as the development of the Indigenous Languages Action Plan. In 2021 is when a council motion established the UNDRIP Task Force, and Indigenous Language and Revitalization and Cultural Infrastructure grants were made available. Anti-racism and cultural redress efforts also supported that, and support for Indigenous youth through arts and culture. In 2022, the creation of Indigenous Relations Department and the Senior Director role occurred, and the nations and City of Vancouver passed the UNDRIP strategy. The Murdered and Missing Women and Girls Response Report provided by the city was passed by council, and the first Indigenous recruiter role was created here at the city. The Equity Office supported Indigenous employees with support through Homewood Health. And in 2023, the Wa'iyamtut-Squamish Relationship Protocol was signed. We installed permanent local nation flags here at City Hall at 12th and Cambie. We expanded the leadership competencies to include UNDRIP in our performance plans. Cultural Indigenous grants to local nations and urban Indigenous groups occurred, and we embedded Squamish values in the Healthy Waters Plan. As we get to 2024, the action plan was passed. The UNDRIP action plan was passed by Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, as well as City of Vancouver. The urban Indigenous data governance through the Healthy City strategies is occurring. We continue with staff training on UNDRIP and implementation. And Council approved the Jericho Lands Policy Statement, And we're continuing the Indigenous storyteller in residence at VPD. The summaries of the work done and underway in the appendix of the report is not an exhaustive list, but rather a showcase of the efforts of past councils and current council, as well as staff to work toward reconciliation for the city. I'd like to thank all people included in initiating and implementing this work. So I'll touch on a really brief overview of the UNDRIP work. We did bring it to council in June, so I'm just going to touch on the key summaries. In terms of Vancouver being the first municipality to co-develop the strategy and action plan, the city has been formally recognized by the province, by the Ministry of Indigenous Relations and Reconciliation for this co-developed work. We are strengthening our relationships with councils across the 4 governments, and we are co-hosting staff learning opportunities to share about the partnerships that we're building. We are creating transformative and systematic change in places that once excluded Indigenous peoples. And as we reflect on the past 10 years of reconciliation activities undertaken by the City of Vancouver, our journey has been one of learning, growth, and meaningful engagement. And while there is much more to learn and improve, each initiative, project, and partnership detailed in this report represents a step toward our commitment to reconciliation. Through our ongoing efforts, we seek to honor the cultures, rights, and histories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh as we move forward to improve our relations with the diverse Indigenous peoples who live and work in the City of Vancouver. Coming back to my button blanket. It is representative of my identity as an Indigenous person. It is the embodiment of the rights and responsibilities I must adhere to. When I put it on, I accept the responsibility to uphold myself in the highest regard, respecting the cultural protocols and traditional ways of living. I have a responsibility not only to myself, but to my tribe and my nation. This responsibility also extends to protection of the language, the culture, and the land, and is deeply rooted in respect. This extends to my deep respect for Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh and their cultural protocols, and I bring my cultural teachings about respect for another nation's territory. In my role as Senior Director, Indigenous Relations, I bring with me my identity as an Indigenous woman, the teachings I have received from my elders and my grandparents. I do this work to uphold the rights of Indigenous people and to widen the path for those who will come after me, just as those who came before me widened the path for me. It will take continued commitment from the city to continue to build a respectful, trusting relationship with Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, as well as the diverse population of Indigenous people living and working in the city as we continue the journey of reconciliation together. We must promote continuous improvement and ensure that reconciliation maintains priority status if we are to create transformative change. Thank you for listening and learning with me today. Thank you to all city staff and for their contributions to the city's reconciliation work. We'll move into the recommendations again. And I just want to highlight the reason that we are bringing these recommendations for you today. The first recommendation talks about combining the reconciliation report as well as the UNDRIP report for efficiencies. And it really, it's going to help us. There was a previous council motion to have an annual reconciliation report, and with our current UNDRIP work, we also have built into the recommendations from that a report for UNDRIP. So the intent is to combine the 2 reports into one report.
Sorry. Just as a matter of process, we have to move a motion first.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. We have questions first. All right, so questions, then move a motion. Perfect, sorry. Okay. Great. So can we do this? We'll pause right there. I'm going to start the question queue, and then we'll We'll continue on.
Right.
All right. Sorry about that. Okay. So Councillor Fry, you're up. Oh, sorry. By the way, council members, you have up to 5 minutes to ask any questions of team members. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor. And thanks, Michelle, for the presentation and also explaining your regalia, which looks amazing. And thank you for sharing that with us. I'm curious about the recommendations and the framing around shifting towards UNDRIP and leaving behind reconciliation. I feel like, and please explain this to me if I'm being ignorant here, but I feel like UNDRIP is a forward-looking kind of approach, whereas reconciliation is recognizing many of the harms and things like the colonial audit and stuff that is also importantly kind of reflected upon. And I wonder if I worry that it loses the importance and poignancy of what reconciliation is about when we start talking about future rights, and if that's a messaging thing that needs to be teased out.
Yeah, and I think it's never intended to leave out the truth and reconciliation portions. It's built into the UNDRIP action plan and the annual accountability report that we have. So what our intention is to do is similar to how we presented the report this time, is to present the work that we are doing on reconciliation as part of the annual report and progress that we are making on UNDRIP. And in terms of the colonial audit integration, I looked at the scoping of the colonial audit that was done in 2019, and that included 4 recommendations. One of those was to achieve a standard of cultural competency for all City of Vancouver staff. That is built into UNDRIP, the UNDRIP work. The second was an organizational structure that supports Indigenous staff. That is built into UNDRIP. And to increase the number of city staff and bring Indigenous perspectives into planning and decision-making, that's built into UNDRIP. And to provide all staff with effective decision-making tools and information that supports their work and interactions with Indigenous people and with the community at large, that is also built into UNDRIP. So it's staff's view that the work that we're doing, both in Indigenous relations with relation to the UNDRIP strategy and action plan, as well as the work on the equity framework, and still keeping the reconciliation framework as our guiding posts for reconciliatory work. Those 3 documents encompass what was scoped out in the colonial audit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that excellent overview and reaffirmation of the process and that we've been on as a city. My first question, because I was really taken by a number of points you made, talking about the need for resources, education, dialogue practices, for example. Resources are we going to be assured in council, I don't know, so it's teased out in terms of an actual affirmation that sufficient resources are going to be embedded in the next operating budget, for example, to ensure the implementation that needs to happen around UNDRIP?
Yeah, so that is occurring right now with direction from city manager. Departments are working on building budget into their departmental budgets. There is a operational budget for UNDRIP itself that includes capacity funding to the nations. As we're moving in our first part of implementation, we will have likely a more fulsome understanding of the actual budgetary needs as we move into 2025. But what we have planned for, 2026, but what we are planning for 2025, the operational needs appear to be sufficient.
Okay.
However, it is something to consider for future, that we will need increased resources.
I think it's good to keep council abreast
Yep.
of whether or not we're meeting this obligation that we have taken. Around education, there are some things that I think are really good ways to educate the public. For example, renaming Trudge Street. Why is renaming Trudge Street taking so long?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So we are working in the spirit of co-creation and co-development with Musqueam on that. And they have a very small but mighty language and culture department with a lot of other aspects that they're working with, including their own language revitalization within their community. So it's a matter of respecting the capacity of the nation and also being ready when they're ready. So Nathan is currently working on the committee to do the work, and they have meetings coming up. So Musqueam has been working away at it at the level that they're able to, as well as city staff.
Yes, okay. Resources is an important word in that process. Okay, thank you. I also was very excited in the Vancouver plan and the Broadway plan to see council pass unanimously the incorporation of First Nations, host First Nations language, history, art into the landscape. So how is that work progressing from a planning point of view?
Yeah, can I pass that to Doug to answer for me?
I did look in that direction. Thank you.
Doug Smith, Deputy General Manager, Planning, Urban Design, and Sustainability. Regarding Broadway and the additional plans we're doing, not just in that area, but across the city, it is still early days looking at how we can incorporate First Nations and Indigenous design. It's definitely something we're open to, and we've seen a recent project from VCC that it does it quite nicely, and so we're looking forward to more of that.
Okay. Work in progress?
Work in progress.
Hopefully faster than slower.
Yes.
Thank you. And I have one final question, which is really around the working relations and on actual very pragmatic projects. So my understanding is, but correct me if I'm wrong, that in the West End waterfront plan that came to this council from the park board, there was a lot of First Nations involvement in the restoration and the sort of natural protection of the waterfront beaches. Council chose not to, in the majority, pass that, but was indeed that work really generative from First Nations knowledge of how you reestablish a natural landscape to protect a vulnerable foreshore?
Yeah, so First Nations knowledge is a big part, and is, as I read from the TRC 10 principles, is a really important part of building reconciliation into the work that we do. Unfortunately, we don't have Park Board online, a staff person, to answer the question more fulsomely for you, but we can get an answer in written form to you from them.
I'd appreciate that. And I'd appreciate knowing when First Nations, local host nations, particularly involvement, has really informed something that comes to the council table.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation this morning. I just have one question. It arises from a discussion I had at UVCM a couple of weeks ago with a member of the Aboriginal Housing Management Association. And they were reflecting to me an interest in collaborating with the city on co-op housing, particularly to meet the needs of urban Indigenous youth and adults. And I'm just curious if you might comment on that, and is that an opportunity that we could explore? And if so, maybe I could put them in touch with you and others within the city team. But
Yeah, and I think we have a representative from Housing on the line to answer the question. Nathan? Celine?
I think it's more a question for Doug in terms of policy.
I think it's really faint. We can't hear.
It's Celine here. Can you hear me?
Celine, it's the clerk in the chamber. Can you try to speak closer to your microphone?
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Better. Thank you.
I think that might be a better question for Doug from Housing Policy and Regulation.
And it doesn't have to be answered today on the floor if we don't have staff available, but I just wanted to identify it as a conversation that arose through some discussions I had there.
Thank you for the question. So we have been working, not necessarily with Aman, but we have been working with a number of providers to look for opportunities to include youth housing in their projects. So it is something that we are ongoing having discussions with. The challenge with this necessarily is the actual funding that would take to actually carve out even 5 or 10 units in any particular project for youth. It would have to come with funding, particularly operating funding.
Yeah.
From MCFD to actually support those individuals, especially youth in those projects. So you would have to actually balance how to incorporate those individuals in, let's say, projects for families or projects for seniors, and that would be a challenge. But it is ongoing, and there are some really good examples where integration for youth have happened in the city of Vancouver. There's a project on Fraser with the Vancouver Housing and Health Society that have 19 units within their development. There are other examples as well, but we can certainly get you more information if you would like.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I think just to be clear, just to reflect, is I think they were also interested in collaboration on specifically co-op housing undertaken with city-owned land that would serve the urban Indigenous population here in general as well. So not just youth, but
Absolutely,
more
yeah.
broadly. So I can make those connections.
And I'm happy to follow up as well if you'd like.
Okay, thanks,
Of course.
Armin. Thank you. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Michelle, for the presentation. I noted and this may be an engineering question, but I'll just throw it out there. There's mention of an installation of an emergency phone in the Hastings corridor in early 2025. I was just looking for more information on the background on that, maybe where it'll be located and what we're hoping to achieve with it.
Do we have engineering? We'll turn that question over to Jimmy Zamar.
Good morning. Thank you for this question, Councillor. Jimmy Zamar, Deputy GM Engineering, and here for Lon Leclerc, GM of Engineering. I don't have the exact answer to this, but I'm happy to get back to you as soon as possible with details on this.
Okay, that'd be great. I mean, I could certainly see the need for it if people don't have a mobile phone, which I know is the reality for many people on the downtown east side. So would appreciate just a bit more information on that. Sounds like a good initiative. Thanks. That's it for me.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Our first public speaker is Robin Tavender.
Good morning, members of Vancouver City Council. My name is Robin Tavender. I am one of the Standing Water people, and we are a mobile Indigenous people. Our people have always lived in accordance with the flow of water, light, and life, moving freely across the world without the limitations of borders or fixed territories. And today I rise to address several concerns with the report. It seems like it's very good work, but while this report touches on various important elements of reconciliation, it fails to acknowledge the existence of mobile Indigenous peoples, like the Standing Water people, whose ways of life are deeply rooted in movement and stewardship, not sedentary land claims. The report instead focuses on local nations tied to geometric territories, which reflect a settler colonial mindset, not the full spectrum of Indigenous relationships to air, light, and water. These omissions not only perpetuate colonial frameworks, but also disregards the usufructuary rights that many Indigenous peoples hold, rights that are not about dominion over land, but about the responsible use of resources across time and space, respecting the natural flow of life and water. These principles are part of our ancestral oral law, a system that predates and transcends the laws of Canada and any other colonial state. I would also like to emphasize a passage from the report that underscores the narrow focus on local Indigenous nations. Phase 2 consultation with the local nations focused on self-determined nation priorities, including ways to integrate ceremony and cultural protocols. I believe that's on page 20. While these efforts are crucial, and no one would say they're a bad idea, I don't think, they fail to recognize mobile Indigenous peoples whose customs and rights do not align with fixed territories. By centering local nations in the discussion, the report effectively sidelines those whose lives are not tied to the concept of traditional territory as defined by colonial systems. And as I've said before, this notion is eerily close to the Roman law traditional territory as articulated by the Roman jurist Gaius. It's really quite similar, and it's just, I guess, a coincidence. Finally, I urge the Council to implement a transparent and inclusive process for mobile Indigenous communities to be consulted and engaged. True reconciliation requires recognizing the diversity of Indigenous experiences and governance systems. It must embrace not only local nations with territorial claims, but mobile peoples whose ancient ways of life transcend borders and time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, and right on 3 minutes. Okay, so that is the end of our speakers list. So thank you very much for coming on in. Would someone like to move a motion? Moved by Councillor Kirby-Young, seconded by, I think, Councillor Dominao. She just got ahead of you there, Mr. Klassen, Councillor Klassen, so sorry. Look at you next time. Is there any discussion? Right, seeing no one. Oh, Councillor Carr.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
just very briefly, just to again affirm my immense pride and joy in seeing us as a city establish a much larger department that can support our pursuit of not just reconciliation, but actual collaborative way forward with the host nations. I'm very proud of Vancouver's movement on this, and really particularly laud the staff that have been leading the way for us and educating us along the way. And so thank you for that work.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor, and in many ways echoing my colleague Councillor Carr in reflecting thanks and gratitude for the presentation this morning and the updates, but also to reflect. I'm really motivated when I think about the work around reconciliation, and then, as Councillor Carr put it, the pursuit of reconciliation. I think about children a lot in all of this. I think about the children past. But I also think about the children in the future and being a parent. I think that motivates me a lot. And I was just rereading yesterday a quote by Maya Angelou, which talks about, when you know better then and learn to do better and do better in the future. And so that really, it's a paraphrase, but that drives me and motivates me. And I know we still have lots of work to do. So not sugarcoating that, but I just do want to acknowledge the hard work and efforts of our team, Michelle and your team, and that we're committed to continuing that work together and learning together, which I think is a big part of it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Clausen.
Yes, just a very brief remark, only in echoing some of the compliments and gratitude for the work that's been done by the department. But I also just wanted to say something because it just rang so loudly to me. When we went to the recent housing announcement at Heatherlands with MST, to hear Chief Wayne Sparrow say that City of Vancouver was an example to other levels of government on how to approach the reconciliation and the work around NDRIP. And I just felt, I felt pride on behalf of all of us in terms of the work that has happened, and very kind of Chief Sparrow to say that in front of all the media cameras and all the other dignitaries present. So I think he's right. And I do think Vancouver is really leading the way here. So thank you again. Proud to support.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are now going to call a vote. Can we please all go to the voting panel? Great, and that passes unanimously. So Michelle, and to everyone on your team, thank you for the incredibly hard work that you're doing on this incredibly important file. It's appreciated, and it's just amazing to see in action. So thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda is number 3, Vancouver Heritage Register upgrade. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on this item? Okay, so this item has a team member presentation, and we have team members here to present this item. Are we, if you guys want to present, we're ready to go. Oh, okay. I wasn't too sure if something got lost in translation as I declared it as you guys were walking in, or as part of the team was walking in. We have to wait for quorum. One, two. Right. We're good, right? All right, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Hello, Mayor and Council. I'm Jason Olnick, Director of Development Planning, and I'll be doing a brief intro before Zlatan presents the more detailed overview of the Vancouver Heritage Upgrade Program. Next slide. To start, we'd like to give thanks to the land on which we live and work and to the people who have cared for it. We acknowledge that the land we are gathered on is the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We're humbly grateful to the host nations for their hospitality and generosity. Okay. The Vancouver Heritage Register, which you may hear is referred to as the VHR or just the register in this presentation, is primarily a land use tool. It lists heritage properties recognized by City Council for having heritage value. It was originally established in 1986 as an inventory, and it was later renamed to the Vancouver Heritage Register in 1994. It has not been significantly upgraded since. While properties listed on the register may not be protected from demolition, they are listed in recognition for holding heritage value to the community and thus are afforded different protections and incentives for redevelopment. The register serves as an important reference resource to property owners, land developers, design professionals, and staff involved in the land development and permitting processes. This has been an approximately 2-year work plan that started with engagement and industry input from consultants, internal and external stakeholders, civic advisory bodies, heritage organizations, the nations, and the public. The scope of the upgrade project seeks to help achieve a number of goals listed here, in which Latin is going to present in more detail throughout his presentation. The first is to align with the Vancouver Heritage Program and directions which were adopted by Council in March of 2020. This includes refocusing to relate more consistently to tangible built heritage, to update and modernize the evaluation methodology, and to align or be consistent with industry practices, in particular with the industry's national standards and guidelines for conservation of historic places in Canada. The second is Truth and Reconciliation and the city's UNDRIP action plan, including the co-written truth-telling statement and land acknowledgements, removing, where feasible, Eurocentric values and biases to better embrace an inclusive approach to heritage, and to help inform future considerations for the development of approaches to intangible cultural values, including Indigenous cultural heritage. And lastly, to simplify or improve the heritage review process, including an integrated data management plan and public access, content updates emphasizing clearer and more consistent formatting, and meeting the City of Vancouver's accessibility standards. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Zlatan Jankovic, Senior Heritage Planner, to go through all the work in modernizing this 30-year-old document, including recommendations to approve the upgraded register and following amendments to the heritage policies. Thank you.
Jason. Mr. Mayor, Councillors, my name is Zlatan Jankovic. I'm the Senior Heritage Planner. I'll continue the presentation. The register, as you heard from Jason, has not been updated since 1986, except for annual additions or removals of properties from the listing. To reflect numerous evolutionary changes that occur over the time, like embracing tangible cultural values, adopting community-based approaches to heritage resource management, or the Truth and Reconciliation implementation, the comprehensive VHR review was found necessary. The original mandate to review the Heritage Register was given to staff in 2013 by the Heritage Action Plan, and then reconfirmed in 2020 when Council adopted the Vancouver Heritage Program. The actual VHR upgrade work commenced in 2022. Next slide, please. Over the period of 2 years, the project was subject to a thorough engagement process, including meetings with Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. The open houses and consultation with internal and external stakeholders have helped complete the review and define the scope of upgrades. The full implementation of all the upgrades, including integration with various city systems, is envisioned by early 2025. The VHR policy review has identified a number of shortcomings. The major ones are as follows. Misalignment with the Vancouver Heritage Program and its set priorities for inclusion, diversity, and equity. Inconsistency with the Vancouver Charter. Need to clarify and simplify the VHR policy to help improve the permit processing. Outdated heritage evaluation methodology. Non-compliance with the UNDRIP strategy and the Truth and Reconciliation initiatives. And outdated data management system and public interface. The identified shortcomings, as listed, became the main drivers for change. They define emerging directions for the improvement of the VHR. The key emerging directions are refocus the VHR policy to primarily a land planning tool for built heritage resource management. Receive and include feedback from Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Modernize VHR policy to embrace principles of inclusivity, diversity, and equity. Improve heritage evaluation methodology to reflect both tangible and intangible values. Meet City of Vancouver accessibility standards. Update City of Vancouver VHR website integrate new VHR data management plan, improve permit processing and heritage review time. The other major outcome was the realization that intangible cultural heritage requires development of new and different tools and processes beyond the heritage register. The future work will require interdepartmental effort and further policy development in that regard. The existing VHR policies were reviewed and clarified. Although practically unchanged, the policies have now been consolidated and embedded for quick and clear reference within the VHR document itself. The key policies are: to be added to the register, a historic place need to be at least 20 years old. The historic place must meet requirements of one of the 3 heritage value categories as per the new heritage evaluation methodology. Addition to the VHR requires the consent of the property owner. The qualified VHR application would need to be endorsed by Heritage Commission, and the addition to the VHR requires council approval. One of the major findings of the VHR review process was that its framework and evaluation methodology were based on Eurocentric cultural values that magnifies importance of architectural heritage, and at the same time missing to acknowledge appropriately other present cultures and values. The lack of diversity and inclusivity lenses in the current VHR is vividly manifested by a number of identified biases, as you can see on this slide, or actually it was on the previous slide, including the lack of community voices through the process. These findings led to the development of the new heritage evaluation methodology, together with a broader set of evaluation criteria, which recognizes the importance of both tangible and non-tangible cultural and historical elements. Just keep this slide though. Speaking of the new evaluation methodology, its intent is to ensure more equitable approaches to evaluating historic places by identifying both the tangible and intangible values. Not only physical attributes of the historic place, but also connection with people and their histories equally contributes to places' heritage. This is one, if there is a single statement that highlights the advances of the whole work here, this is this one. Intangible, tangible, and intangible values are being considered together. The new heritage evaluation methodology is centered around this inclusivity principle, recognizing the importance of living heritage. Based on the best Canadian and international practices, and what we heard through the consultation process, the upgrade will replace the alphanumerical grading system with a values-based, community-centered approach that allows for a more fulsome understanding of buildings' meanings and significances. The upgraded register contains a list of built heritage resources, buildings and structures, while all other resources currently on the register would be moved to an appendix and kept for reference only. The resources that would be placed in the appendix include streetscapes, landscape resources like parks, trees, monuments, and archaeological sites. These changes will clarify internally to the staff, to the public, and developers the existing scope of Heritage Register. And, in addition, what the city actually manages through the permit application process. This was another practical advancement that we think we are bringing to the table by doing the updates to the Heritage Register. The VHR data management upgrade aims to modernize the collection, storage, and management of VHR. In slide 13. As part of this work, staff have established a new data management process. Sorry, I think can you go back, please? And one more. That one. Sorry about this. The VHR data management upgrade aims to modernize the collection, storage, and management of VHR assets. As part of this work, staff have established a new data management process that streamlines the entry, reducing errors and improving compatibility with city GIS systems, reduces data entry points and leveraging automated tools, and ensures consistency amongst the VHR policy document and other city systems, including VanMap, Open Data, and POSI. This upgrade will also provide an opportunity for staff to simplify the summary, analysis, and reporting out of heritage assets in the future. To date, staff have implemented the new VHR asset tracking and management process and are working towards updating other city systems to be in alignment with the updates made to the register. Implementation work will continue through to Q1 2025, which includes the development of a public-facing VHR property search tool in the form of a mapping application. This is a new improvement that the public will be able to search for the heritage register directly through the application that's available on city's website. In summary, the new VHR comprises of 2,272 properties, buildings, and structures listed in its main schedule and 220 entries listed in the appendix for reference. You may notice that the total number of properties are almost identical to the existing VHR numbers. This is because the VHR upgrade was not about adding new properties to the register, rather clarifying its purpose and content and making it more effective, functional, and accessible. The VHR upgrades do not introduce new requirements for the permit reviews. In fact, they aim at streamlining and simplifying heritage reviews and associated permit processing. Staff will continue to annually bring nominations for addition to the heritage register to council for approval, as we did in the past, usually once a year. The VHR review process included a consultation with Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, and feedback received was incorporated. Although the MST nations clearly communicated that they are not interested in engaging on VHR in its current format, thus acknowledging its colonial origin and continued harm did not change. They expressed interest in future co-development of new heritage management tools. Staff will continue to coordinate activities related to development of adequate tools for the Indigenous cultural heritage with the MST nations. The new VHR also incorporated UNDRIP strategy by responding to 4.7a action, which directly referenced the VHR upgrade project. As a result, the new VHR policy includes the truth-telling statement in accordance with the feedback received from the MST nations and their self-expressed priorities regarding their cultural heritage and how they wish to be reflected in the VHR. The statement developed with MST nations is prominently featured on page 2 of the Vancouver Heritage Policy document and includes the links to the nation's heritage policy content. The implementation of the database management plan and activation of the updated VHR webpage will commence immediately after council approval with substantial completion by the end of this year. Some components of the database integration work, like integration with POSI, will be completed by the end of Q1 2025. All outstanding work will be conducted by current project staff with no additional human resources or financial requirements. Thank you for your attention. Our team will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you very much. Now, council members, you have up to 5 minutes to ask questions of team members, and we have some. So, Councillor Meisner.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation. A 30-year-old policy certainly will need a refresh, so I'm glad to hear that that's happening. I just wanted to ask a couple questions. Could you clarify how these changes are going to improve accessibility?
The accessibility that was referenced here is accessibility that is the new City of Vancouver standard in how the documents are written and how legible they are, how accessible to public and how legible they are. So as a part of that accessibility exercise, we had to process the document that has 25 entries as basically a database document that created quite a technical challenge to put it through a new template that City has developed for that purpose. That means the font size and font styles need to be a certain type to be more legible. That's kind of accessibility.
Just to clarify, so it's just the online aspect of the.
It is the online aspect, but also the hard copy of the document is also need to follow up the improvements.
Okay. What about like the plaques that you see on buildings? Will that practice continue?
That practice continues. The plaques that we see on buildings is related not to heritage register, it is related to those properties that are legally protected by heritage designation. So that practice continues, but it's linked to different process.
Okay. But those properties that are protected by the heritage designation with those plaques are on the registry, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. I noticed there was a mention about, and I just want to clarify, are we adding parks, trees, and parks and trees to the Heritage Registry? Is that correct, or are they already on it?
They are currently listed on the register.
Okay.
And probably wrongfully listed because they were never evaluated for heritage values. They didn't, and not being evaluated, that created the intent of adding them to the register at the time they were added, which is 1986, was perhaps to save them from being destroyed.
Okay.
Well, in the meantime, so many other frameworks and policies were developed, including, let's say, the tree bylaw, that has a section within it for special trees and provides actual protection to trees, whereas listing on the register does not provide protection. It just identifies places for heritage value to the community. So in that regards, we found, and then also the fact that we had trees on the register did not comply with Vancouver Charter because Vancouver Charter relates to register as a place for real property.
Okay.
So they had to go through the layer of clarification and clearing and making the new policy more robust and more consistent with various aspects.
So they'll be removed from the registry with this.
They will be placed in the appendix.
Okay. I see.
For information purposes, so that we still have a record of it, but they are not considered to be listed on the register.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for that. And then I think you answered this during the presentation, but I just want to clarify as well. How do we expect these changes to impact the overall number of heritage recognized buildings and sites? Will there be any impact?
Not necessarily. What we see here is we are opening the opportunities for places as they're being added to the register to be recognized for more of the cultural values that they have associated with it. In the past, primarily architectural values.
Okay.
But now we're opening. That doesn't mean that will be influx of places being added to the register. It probably means that those that are added would be evaluated on a wider spectrum of values.
Okay, not just the architectural value.
Not just architectural values, yes.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for clarifying that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joe?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks for the presentation and the update. Two quick questions. As we move away from this alphanumerical grading system, how do we maintain the difference of the significance of the heritage site? Or are we treating them exactly the same?
We will be treating them exactly the same.
Okay. So then there will be no difference between the number of years for each heritage site.
No, but to be added to the register, the property would need to be at least 20 years old. But it could also be added to the register for the reasons that are not necessarily material to a degree of like architectural features, but also for the importance to the community and association with cultural and social values with the place.
So is there still a way we can differentiate the number of years for each site? Because
we still keep a record of the age. As we do the heritage evaluations for all these places, the data is collected about the age of the place.
Okay, just the records, but there's no classification of the.
No classification because that basically would not impact the final outcome as long as the place is more than 20 years old.
Okay, thank you. The other question I saw in the report, there are 92 sites. They are in the VHR, but they do not have the heritage classification. I think the reason is because of there's a provincial blanket measure.
Yes.
Yeah. So is there any plan to give the plaque to those 92 sites?
The plaques?
Especially in Chinatown, yeah.
Yeah, so these places that are designated
Okay.
Right. They are designated, and designation is not removed. They're still designated. Every designated place should have a plaque.
Oh, okay.
All designated places should have plaques. The uniqueness about these 92 sites is that they were designated, but they were not listed as on a heritage register. So they were placed on a register just because of designation for convenience purposes. And one of the reasons we are updating the VHR is to remove all these redundancies. So the information is still kept. The places are listed in the appendix, but they are not. They have not been evaluated for heritage value in the past, and thus they were not added to the register main schedule. So nothing lost. It's just clarifying their status.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's very clear. Thank you for the answer.
very welcome.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carr.
I'm still not clear. So,
Please.
so if those sites, those 92 sites in particular, not being listed in an appendix, but not listed in the registry, what does that mean about their level of protection?
Nothing, because these sites keep the level of protection. Listing property on the register does not offer any protection. But if the property that is listed on the register is also designated by heritage bylaw or have heritage alteration agreement list, that is protection level. Register document changed.
There's a variety of them, Okay, so what about new, potentially new designations? I don't know if you listened to, or if anybody at the council table listened to Margaret Gallagher's North by Northwest on Sunday, but she interviewed an architect in the city, Yamamoto, who has just published a book called Carts, Hedges, and Lions. And it's about elements in the landscape of Vancouver that are shopping carts, unique hedges, and stone and whatever lions. So if somebody wanted to designate one of those kinds of features, which have not been, let's say, designated in the past, is that possible?
Well, are we talking about the landscape, cultural landscapes?
Yes, it's absolutely cultural landscape.
Yeah. So the cultural landscapes are, sorry? Yes. Yeah. So what we found is that because these features are usually not subject to a permit process. Let's say you have a rock.
Yeah. Or let's say a lion.
A lion.
Sure. Okay.
It's on a public. Okay. The lion on a bridge. Let's say.
Yeah. At the end of the bridge. Yeah. Familiar with it.
Those features. These features are captured as a character-defining element for the bridge,
right?
And thus they are recognized for their heritage values. Being a character-defining elements identifies them of heritage value. So if there is a natural feature on the land next to the house may be recognized and added to the register, and the feature would be listed on character-defining element as a character-defining element associated with the site. The feature itself cannot be listed because it's not a property. It is especially features like trees. We cannot. The charter would not allow it. It's not. It needs to be building or structured in order to land itself on the register. In addition to that, we are looking into. We found that through consultation process that the best place to recognize cultural landscapes is through community plans. But a community plan is looked for the area. It's developed for the area. The features like cultural landscapes should be recognized and are recognized. Like in Broadway plan, we have the villages, the 4 villages. They're recognized in cultural landscapes, and they are mentioned and referenced in the Broadway plan. And they are in that way we deal with that type of cultural value. But we cannot add, the grouping of that magnitude to the register because we don't have the processing tools to evaluate such a big places. In the past, we were thinking at some point to do cultural landscapes under heritage register, but we figured out that there are new tools and probably different set of tools that we are looking at, we are developing as we go through community planning processes. One of these tools, special tools that we are thinking and we are implementing now for Rupert Renfrew as well, is cultural heritage asset mapping. So cultural heritage asset mapping is an exercise that is done through a widespread community process. And this is the value and the strength of it, that we hear from the community what is important for them, not that we impose like this building is of importance to you. It's a listening exercise and learning exercise. And this is what we are hoping to achieve even more in the future community plans. So yes, we are still developing the tools for cultural landscape.
Well, I look
We're at
forward
time.
to more reports. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you
Very much. Okay, seeing no one else in the queue, we're now going to hear from registered speakers for this report. Now, public speakers should state whether they are in support or opposition of the recommendations and may only speak once. I will also ask speakers if they're residents of Vancouver if it is not noted on the speakers list. So now our first public speaker is Laura Carey.
Good morning, Mayor Simon, Council. My name is Laura Carey. I'm the Executive Director of the Vancouver Heritage Foundation. I'd like to recognize Councillor Dominato, who is our liaison to Council. Thank you. I'm here today in support of the proposed updates to the Heritage Register. As a tool that inventories Vancouver's heritage assets, the Heritage Register has value and represents a significant amount of work completed over decades. That being said, fresh updates are welcome. According to the available documents, it appears that the city's heritage evaluation methodology has not been significantly updated since its introduction in 1986. As it stands, the Heritage Register could be more equitable, reflective of the breadth and scope of Vancouver's diverse heritage, specifically the deep Indigenous heritage of this land, as well as more relevant and accessible for public and professional use. The proposed update values host nation input, as numerous consultation meetings took place with host nations about the updates. Including a truth-telling statement is a step in the right direction in recognizing Vancouver's heritage. This truth-telling statement can and should inform the methodology the city is using to assess heritage value. The new evaluation methodology included in the Heritage Register updates. It reflects current best practices, including values-based, equitable, and community-centered approaches to heritage identification, recognition, and resource management. As noted in Zlatan's presentation, the three major changes that we'll notice includes, number one, simplifying evaluation criteria to only 3 points. 1.1, cultural traditions, 1.2, historical association, and 1.3, design and technology. The second shift will be moving from an alphanumeric grading system to a checklist format. And number three, removing the need for a statement of significance requirement unless for a site that is subject to permit application review. I'd like to point out that the conservation grants that the Vancouver Heritage Foundation administers for the city includes the cost of statements of significance and the cost to apply to the Heritage Register as eligible expenses. We are able to support site owners and stewards in the Heritage Register application process with these tools. In our granting procedure, we've received public feedback that there's a lack of understanding of the purpose and the function of the Heritage Register, and that the application process is perceived to be opaque. The proposed updates replace the ABC grading format with a checklist, making it clear that a minimum of one of 3 specified evaluation criteria must be met, removes the need for statements of significance where not subject to permitting application review. Therefore, the application process is simplified and more accessible to the public. Furthermore, organizational changes like removing ABC categorization and moving sites that have not been assessed for heritage value to the appendix allows for the Heritage Register to be more streamlined, up-to-date, and focused on being a heritage inventory. These changes make the purpose, process, and organization of the document clear for public and professional reference. On behalf of the Vancouver Heritage Foundation, I have full support in the Heritage Planning Department and in Zlatan Yankovic's leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker we have, let's just restart this here. Stop. I hope I got this right here. The next speaker is Yassine Kiraga-Masago.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mayor and the councillors. My name is Yassine. I'm the Executive Director and the founder of African Descent Society and the African Descent Festival. As you know, African Descent Society, it owns the largest database on history and heritage for the people of African descent here in British Columbia. And possibly, if you do much investigation on the history database we have in Canada, so many organizations, institutions, and schools across this country, they keep coming to Vancouver, including the military and the police. I've led a number of hundreds of walking tours, heritage walking tours in this city and right across the country. And I can tell you, I know every historical and heritage site for every city that owns for the last 500 years for the Black community, whether grave sites or any historic sites across this country. And I can help you in Vancouver to point out, I've helped a number of planners, developers, including the Amazon recently when the Vancouver Heritage Commission, they were struggling to find the building known as 534 Kambi, whether it has any historical significance with the Black community. And I think they were very happy with the work I did with them because they first hired the city hired the historian is here, Vancouver, Donald Laxton is the one who sent them to me because he had very little knowledge about that. He's the same person you sent when you are fighting with the Hoganizale 500 Block 207, which is known as the Vice Chicken and the Steakhouse, but the adjacent little block which is there on that particular hotel owned by Vincent. I know a lot of cities here, they have been fighting to understand whether that was historically part of the Vice Chicken and the Steakhouse, which was there before. And I think I did a lot of contribution to bring them the reality of how was that block connection with the community. So, Mayor and the councillors here, when we talk about heritage, we talk about traditions and history, culture for all communities. But in this particular case, why I'm here is to advise you that I've been following the trends of this heritage upgrading and the heritage program since 1986, 2020. When you look at all the amendment you've been making and the creation, I think there has been either no or little consultation with the Black community in Vancouver. And this community has been here for 165 years. When you talk about this, remember about James Douglas, remember about Mifflin Gibbs, those people who set up this neighborhood, this community to be what it is. The registrar does not reflect anywhere about the special recognition of this community. And for me, going to English Bay Beach and the Vancouver Parks Board use a lot of draconian rules to say, get out of this beach, has no connection with the Black community. And you go to Thornton Park, and then you launch the police down there. And then we came back here. Things that we've been doing has brought the festival over now 40,000 people coming to Vancouver to learn about the history, the heritage, the culture, tangible and intangible, jazz music, blues, hip hop, and guess all that is part of this neighborhood.
I apologize.
Yes.
We're like almost a minute over your allotted time.
Yeah,
but I really want to thank you for coming in today and expressing your thoughts and highlighting them. So,
thank you so much again.
Thank you very much. The next speaker we have is King Solomon Kabagambe. I hope I pronounced that name correctly.
Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you so much, the councillors and everyone. Indeed, my name is King Solomon, and I'm the coordinator of the African Descent Festival. So Yasin is my manager. And so I'm speaking in favor of the report. So I'm supporting it because the old method did not reflect my community. It didn't include it. And but before I go further, I want to, as Yasin said, we want to express our grievances because we are not also reflected in the new paradigm. So the report does not mention our community as well. So the question is that how can a marginalized community, a community whose heritage was destroyed, and your predecessor, Mayor, who participated in the destruction, though today we are very reliable partners. How could such a community be missing in such a report? Because as Comrade Yassini was mentioning, the Black community here that existed for more than 160 years, 60 years, contributed a lot in finance, in politics, in sports. People like Mifflin Gibson was the first BC person to be elected, Black person to be elected. People like George Paris was the first BC heavy boxing champion. And he also introduced jazz music here in Vancouver. This is history. Joy Fortes, revamped English Bay and made it what it is. He actually asked your predecessor, Mayor, to construct Davis Street to English Bay. And he lived just close to what is today Alexander Park on Bidwell and Beach Avenue. So, but you cannot, there is no, his name is not reflected. And this report talks about recognizing intangible and tangible heritage. I think this is part of intangible and tangible heritage that we ought to recognize. So we come from Africa. I come from Congo, and I ran the war there. So I was displaced. I reached here with my colleague. We all come from the camp, and our community was destroyed. So there is no community for us. We had to fend for ourselves. And I don't mean platforms that are mediocre, claiming to be community. I mean the community in the real sense of the term, Lord Mayor. With institutions, religious, legal institutions. Where we come from, like in Congo, Uganda, you have, like here, you have temples, you have, we don't have that for the Black community. And I think moving forward, we should reflect, the report should reflect the heritage for the Black community.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for highlighting these issues and coming in today. And
thank you so much, Lord Mayor.
The final speaker on the speakers list is James Evans. James.
Good morning, members of council and the mayor. My name is James Evans. I'm a local resident. I'm also the chair of the Vancouver Heritage Commission right now. I'm also a local home builder who's done a number of heritage projects in the past and present as well. So I just really wanted to come and lend my wholehearted support to this initiative. It's been going on for quite a long time. I know it's come to the commission on a number of occasions, and finally here we are. So I'm hopeful the council will see fit to approve this and support it. This is, as I say, long overdue. I'm also hopeful that we can use this as a building block to bring back some of the heritage preservation tools that seem to have been not used recently, things like heritage revitalization agreements and heritage density transfers and things like that, to use as an additional tool in the suite of policies that are presently available now to encourage housing in Vancouver. I've done a number of projects that are heritage revitalization agreements where we've been able to use them not only to preserve heritage but also densify and build what we talk about, what we call today is missing middle housing. We've been using the heritage tool to do that for a couple of decades now. So anyway, I hope the council will see fit to support this. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Great. Seeing no one else, actually, seeing no one else on the speakers list, that will be the end of the speakers list. And thank you everyone for coming in today. Would someone like to move a motion? Sorry. Councillor Klassen, I got you first. Awesome, thank you. And seconded by Councillor Dominato. Is there any discussion? And Councillor Dominato, you have the floor.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks to our speakers who came in and spoke. And I'm not going to repeat, by and large, what Laura and James and others said about the heritage component because they both serve on the commission. But I do want to reflect thanks to staff for this work. As James noted, it's been underway for some time. And also the important conversation that we recently had, we had a Heritage Roundtable. Councillor Claassen and I joined that. And I think it was a really constructive discussion about the way forward, and particularly as James noted, heritage preservation in the context of adding density and infill in our neighborhoods, and opportunities for doing more of that, and using some of the tools in the toolbox that we have, or maybe exploring new tools to enable that, so that we're meeting our heritage objectives, but also our housing objectives. And then secondly, I just want to address, because this was a long time coming, was the work around the intangible heritage and the need to recognize the diversity of our communities and our community, recognizing our First Nations, recognizing the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh as First Peoples here, and the cultural history there, but also other communities that have been part of the fabric of the development of the city of Vancouver over many years, including, as Yazin and King Solomon noted, the Black community. But there's a number of other communities. I've had meetings with the Japanese Canadian community as well, and the Chinese Canadian community, and many other communities where it's not about the buildings per se, which often when we think about heritage and historical reference, we think about buildings and structures. It's the intangible, it's the culture, it's the practices, it's the food, it's the people, it's the contributions to history that have formed this city, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous. And so I do want to thank our staff for the work, because that was an important part of our conversations last term. And I know there's still more work to do, and we're having this conversation as we planned, for example, the Vancouver plan, that citywide plan initiated by Councillor Carr, which was, again, we wanted to recognize the intangible heritage. And again, I know there's, to your points, Yazin and King Solomon, there's more work to do for your respective communities and other communities. But this is a start, and I'll wrap my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Seeing no one else in the queue, I'm now going to call the item to a vote. Can we please go to the voting panel? Great, and that passes unanimously. So that completes report number 3. Now, just looking at the time, I think we can make it through, but does anybody want to file a motion to extend to finish? Great. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Claassen. All those in favor say yay. Okay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion passes. And by the way, Doug and your entire team, thank you for all the hard work that you put into this. We really appreciate it. It's super cool. Okay. Moving right along, we're into bylaws now. We have 16 bylaws on the agenda for enactment. Council members who are not present for the meetings related to public hearing enactment bylaws must confirm that they have reviewed the proceedings of the meetings if they want to vote on the enactment. So bylaw 3 was from the public hearing on July the 12th, 2022. Councillors Claassen, Meisner, Montague, Joe, and myself were not on council at the time of the public hearing. Councillor Claassen, have you reviewed the proceedings, and will you be voting on the enactment?
I have and I will.
Good thing. Councillor Meisner? Councillor Montague?
I have and I will.
And Councillor Joe? And I have not, and I will not. Bylaw 6 was from the public hearing on April the 9th, 2024. Councillor Meisner and myself were absent for this item at the public hearing. Councillor Meisner, have you reviewed the proceedings, and will you be voting on the enactment? And I have not, and I will not. Bylaw 15 was from the public hearing on May the 7th, 2024. Councillors Claassen, Montague, and myself were absent for this item at the public hearing. However, on September the 24th, 2024, Councillor Claassen advised he had reviewed the proceedings. Councillor Montague, have you reviewed the proceedings, and will you be voting on the enactment?
I have and I will.
Great, and I have not, and I will not. Would someone like to move the motion to adopt bylaws 1 through 16? Councillor Meisner, seconded by Councillor Joe, I believe. Council, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. The list of approved bylaws can be found on the city's website. Okay, administrative motions. Number one, consequential amendments to the East Fraserlands Design Guidelines Area 1. Does any member want to declare a conflict of interest on this motion? No? Okay. Council, are there any questions to team members? Okay, jumping the gun there, Councillor Kirby-Young, thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Councillor Fry, thank you. Council, is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Notice of council member motions. Are there any notices of council member motions for upcoming standing committee meetings? Well, there's a whole list here. All right, a reminder to please state the title of the motion and the date of the standing committee meeting on which you intend to move the motion. And be sure to send the title and date to the standing committee meeting, of the standing committee meeting by email to the city clerk. So Councillor Joe, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I'd like to call notice of motion for October 23rd standing committee meeting with the motion titled requesting provincial government oversee a City of Vancouver lobbyist registry. It's submitted by myself, Councillor Joe.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, I've submitted two motions for the October 23rd Standing Committee. The first is a lobbyist registry for Vancouver. The second is protecting and enhancing green space for the East End, Chinatown, Hogan's Alley, and Strathcona.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carr.
Yes, I'd like to call notice on, for a motion for October 23rd Standing Committee meeting. Reviewing decision that reversed Vancouver's ban on climate and health harming gas in homes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Montague.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Calling notice of motion for October the 23rd Standing Committee. It's co-submitted by myself and Councillor Meisner. It's titled Enhancing Public Safety Through Real-Time Access to the City's Traffic Camera Network.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bly.
Thank you very much. I have a notice of motion for a standing committee on October 23rd, unlocking community potential, collaborating with faith-based groups for affordable housing and social impact in Vancouver.
Great, thank you very much. And then do I have to see the chair or we're good? No, perfect. Just triple checking here. So I would like to provide a notice of motion for the standing committee meeting on October the 23rd for a motion entitled Establishing a Community Policing Center in Gastown and area to enhance safety and security. Anyone else before we move along? No? Okay. We have one item of new business on the agenda today, requests for leaves of absence. This motion has been circulated to council at the beginning of the meeting and is available on the screen. Would someone like to move a motion? Great. Councillor Joe, seconded by Councillor Klassen. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. Council, are there any other items of new business? Okay, so I'm assuming everyone in the queue here is for inquiries and other matters. Oh, sorry, new business. Okay, Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll just send this to the clerks right now, as I do need to move a LOA for civic business for October 23rd, 5 p.m. onwards. I'll send that to the clerks right now.
Okay. Can I get a seconder, please? Great, Councillor Meisner. All those in favor say yay. Okay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries. Councillor Klassen.
Yes, as well, a leave of absence request for October 23rd from 5 p.m. onward for civic business.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor Joe, thank you. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries. And there's no one else there, so I'm assuming everyone wants to go to the new topic, which is inquiries and other matters. So, Council, are there any inquiries or other matters that you want to discuss? And Councillor Fry, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just want to acknowledge a pretty significant fire in my neighborhood overnight. I did attend the scene this morning. The fire started about 8 o'clock. I was by there about 8 this morning, and ladder 6 was still on site mopping up the scene. 3 houses were completely destroyed, a couple of others quite badly damaged, a number of residents displaced. And I just want to thank Vancouver Fire Rescue for their diligence in preventing what could have been an even huger catastrophic fire. As we know, the houses in Strathcona are old, balloon framed, and very close together. So really want to thank Chief Fry and all the Vancouver Fire Rescue crew, and of course Vancouver Police, who were all on site helping keep people safe last night. It was quite devastating. So,
Great. Thank you very much for that acknowledgement. I think everyone feels the same way here. So thank you, Councillor Fry, for bringing that up. Myself, this is really a question to the city manager. And I was just wondering if there were any updates on the temporary fire hall annex on Gore.
Thanks, Mayor Sim. So we have been working on this project for quite a long time, just given the pressures on Hall 2, the fact that the current, that hall is not designed to support the level of resources and response that is currently required to support the downtown east side. We have, based on concerns that we've heard around the site at Union Gore, our team has paused the rezoning work for that site and is looking at alternatives right now. At this point, we do not have a suitable alternative confirmed, but we are looking at every possible alternative there, and we'll come back to council with those options once we have them. But at this time, again, our fundamental concerns to ensure we can maintain emergency response, fire, rescue, medical services to the downtown east side. As you know, that is the busiest fire hall in Canada. So yeah, at this point, there's no work happening on Union and Gore as we look for alternatives, and we'll report back to council on that.
Thank you very much for that update. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, inquiries, correct, Mayor?
Sorry?
Inquiries, correct?
Yep.
Okay, I have one through you to the city manager, and it's sort of on the heels of the 1-year anniversary of October 7th yesterday, and there was a community gathering, about 1,200 people last night coming together in solidarity and support, and it was a very heavy day, and it was very moving. My inquiry relates to what was also happening simultaneously during that gathering, and there was a protest at the Vancouver Art Gallery. I think all of council are very clear on freedom of speech and expression and the right to gather. I am concerned that that is turning now in the city, because what we saw last night was the burning of Canadian flags and calling for inciting violence for countries to burn, both here at home and abroad. Protesters were masked. They were citing Hezbollah and Hamas, who are both listed as terrorist organizations by the federal government. And I'm wondering if, through Mayor to you, City Manager, if you are in contact with the VPD around this situation, because I'm concerned that it's escalating and it's going beyond protests to inciting violence.
Thanks, Councillor. So I have not been in contact with VPD since the events yesterday evening. Certainly will be, though, and so at this stage I can't comment on whether VPD is pursuing any investigations of criminal or potential criminal behavior that may have occurred at that protest, but we'll certainly be in touch with them around that event, as well as any kind of ongoing concerns they might have going forward, and happy to brief council on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Communities, I'm hearing from communities that they're starting to feel very nervous. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor, and also an inquiry through you to the city manager. And it is just to follow up. Of late, we've had another crane incident at Oak Ridge. We also are a city with an enormous amount of development underway. I mean, really, you can't drive anywhere without seeing multiple cranes on multiple sites downtown, but outside the downtown core. And I'm just curious if, in our discussions with the province and WorkSafe BC, if we are looking at some sort of further strategy to address the safety. I know the province has put in new regulations around crane operations, but I think it is concerning for the members of the public, particularly, and those and workers on site. And I'm just see if you have any comments on that.
Thanks, Councillor. So yes, those new requirements with respect to crane operation have just come into effect. So I think we're all certainly hoping that they will have an effect going forward. We are in contact with WorkSafe regarding the recent incident at Oak Ridge. So I don't have a particular update to share at this point in time, but we're happy to keep council briefed on that particular issue. And we'll be working, I know our Sol Schwebs and our buildings team is in touch and looking at this closely and determining what role the city might play here in addition to what WorkSafe and or Technical Safety BC, the role that they're playing in managing this issue. So happy to keep you apprised. I don't have any further update at this point though.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. That's all my questions.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you. Also a question to City Manager, and this is regarding the news report around the van that had, 100 liters of gasoline in it that was brought in near City Hall and set on fire. And just if there's been any follow-up regarding that in terms of the individual who set the van on fire, and also to just state my incredible thanks, given how many more fires we're hearing about than I ever remember in this city. So the thanks to our members of the fire and rescue team and also the VPD who attend those incidents under great danger.
Thanks, Councillor. So based on the information that we've received from our Corporate Protective Services team here at the city and the VPD, the individual that lit that fire in his own vehicle, the motivation does not appear to have any connection to the city or any other protest activity that might be happening presently. This is an individual that is known to police. There may be some nexus here to other issues that the individual is dealing with presently, but it appears to be primarily coincidental that he selected this location. It wasn't directed at the city.
Okay, thank you. Again, just incredible thanks to members of our first responders, first fire and police, for the work they do to protect us.
Yeah, no, I would echo that. I think for first responders and how dangerous it must be, like putting out a fire with 100 liters of accelerant, and the police that are, securing the area as well. And I had the benefit of watching the news release, and it's just, I'm looking forward to the investigation because, the guy mentioned that, it was like mentioning Trump and what have you, and it seemed he was a little unhinged and angered around that comment. So anyways, it'll be good to see. With that, seeing no one else in the queue there, can we please have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Kirby-Young, seconded by Councillor Clausen. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. This meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much.